Live from WWL Louisiana, this is an Elections on 4 special.
The polls have just closed on the second party primary of 2026, with voters statewide weighing in on a key Senate seat. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for watching this election night. I'm Katie Moore. Many are also taking part in the general election, with races impacting our wallets, such as the position on the Public Service Commission, as well as several tax renewals that are on the ballot. Of course, those tax measures took a controversial turn in recent weeks with the guilty plea and arrest of and resignation of St. Tammany Sheriff Randy Smith following that steakhouse attack. Now, those issues are all on the table for discussion tonight, and our expert analysts, Ron Fauché and Silas Lee, are joining me here in the studio to break down all of the latest returns, call the races, and, of course, the runoffs that will be decided in November. So let's get to them right now. Thanks so much for joining us, as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is somewhat of a lackluster election, and we already saw in the turnout numbers before the polls even closed, before anyone went to vote, with early voting numbers. Can you guys talk about that and what you think that it foreshadows for this election?
Closed primary for one.
Yeah.
Closed primary runoff in particular. Summertime, week before the 4th of July is hot. People are in a vacation mode. And in reference to the candidates, not a lot of daylight between the Republican candidates running for the runoff and the Democratic candidates. Needless to say, they were trying to conserve resources. But we did see a lot of advertising, attack ads in particular, from the Republican candidates. And we did see some social media from both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats. But summertime, and anytime you have a closed primary like we had before in a runoff now, that attracts a smaller group of people. Come November, different ball game.
Yeah, but a lot of people feel like our primary is really where the races won, right, Ron? I mean, given
well, in this instance, because you had an incumbent in the primary, the first primary, who lost, so that was a big national story, which isn't often the case.
Yeah.
But in this case, you've had an election change, you've had an incumbent who's no longer on the ballot. A lot of voters don't know either candidate in the Republican primary that well, and a lot of voters, Democrats, don't know either Democratic candidate very well. So it's a strange election, and I'll tell you, it's impossible for political analysts. I'm going to speak for you here. I was going to bring a bottle of Pepto-Bismol because it's a very difficult race to figure out. We've seen polls; they basically show a pretty close election, but who knows? And it all depends on turnout. And when you have a low turnout like you might have here, anybody's vote that does turn out has that much bigger impact.
And people are confused.
Yeah. About the closed primary system.
The closed primary.
Lots of confusion.
You are adding another election date.
That's right.
And a lot of people think that what happened last month was a primary. And, this is it. No, it's not.
Yeah, I wonder how many people even knew they had to go out and vote today.
Right, and then we still have a November general election. So we'll have 3 elections under this system instead of 2.
And then we'll have the congressional elections for the House of Representatives in addition to that. They'll start
in November, and the runoff is December 12th. So we'll have this season will keep going until almost Christmas time.
It's like a never-ending election cycle.
Right.
All right, well, we hope we're going to be with you guys for all of it. You're going to be with us tonight as we start to get a lot of those
We may leave early.
They're going to stay, I promise, until 10 at least, and give us all the latest. Give us their expertise throughout the night. So, Devin, that's what we all have to look forward to.
All right, Kate, thank you so much. You can also use the QR code to get on the camera on your phone, to scan it, click the link, it'll go straight to our election page, so you can follow along with those returns. So, Katie, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we are going to be checking in on the U.S. Senate race with updates from both Republican candidates, Congresswoman Julia Letlow and State Treasurer John Fleming. They are competing for Senator Bill Cassidy's seat. We're also looking into how things went at the polls today, plus the impact of St. Tammany Parish Sheriff Randy Smith's arrest on the millage. to benefit the Sheriff's Department. So we're going to start tonight with Brandon Walker. He is at Julia Letlow's election night headquarters in Baton Rouge. And I know that room has probably slowly been filling up since we first checked in with you right around 5:15. Brandon, what's it look like?
Yeah, Devin, good evening to you. You can't see in my view here because of how things are structured, but there is a group of people gathering over there. I should say that that is where the bar is, because outside of that, there isn't much action here in the room. The Congresswoman hasn't yet arrived, although everyone is awaiting her arrival here as we do get set for polls to close. Time now 8:08, polls closed 8 minutes ago. So it's a question of when we'll see the Congresswoman get here. She is very much so hopeful for a victory here, and she is coming in flying high, of course, as we know, with President Donald Trump's endorsement. That came the first time around, and in part, that's why we are here today seeing Senator Bill Cassidy now as a lame duck here, with both Fleming and Letlow here competing for who will be the Republican candidate for this Senate seat. Now listen, Ron had a really good point here when he was talking to Katie, when it will all come down to voter turnout, because as far as recognition is concerned, despite the president's endorsement, there really isn't much knowledge on the ground as to who Congresswoman Letlow is. So it's a matter of what voters are thinking if they get to the polls today, how they do and how they sway. Letlow does have a name who has been in Congress, but also Fleming has a name both in Louisiana Congress and within the Trump administration. He's hoping, despite not having the president's endorsement here, that his experience with the president and his ideology will be enough to sway voters. But again, it is a question of what voters will think. When you talk about money in this race, watching it, both of them have about what and what in their coffers, but it's a question of the super PACs. Letlow has more money as far as that's concerned with the super PACs who have supported her through this point, and that is all in line with President Donald Trump's endorsement. The question tonight here in this runoff election for the Republican endorsement is, what does that mean to voters who, again, don't have a good, strong understanding of both of these candidates, but again, are going to the polls and deciding what it means for them as far as where their Republican ideals lay with President Donald Trump, or outside of President Donald Trump as far as endorsements are concerned, at least, with State Treasurer John Fleming. So again, things are still pretty quiet here as far as the Letlow campaign is concerned. Folks are beginning to file in, but they're congregating over at the bar where they can probably get a pop or two before things get popping, so to speak. And we'll be here as the results begin to come in, let you know how the room changes or not, depending on what the mood is. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Brandon, we know that mood could change very quickly depending on what we learn in just the coming hours.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, her opponent, State Treasurer John Fleming, is also having his watch party in Baton Rouge tonight. That is where we find Whitney Miller. We're going to head over live to her now. Whitney, how are things over there?
Hey, Devin. Yeah, things here are getting better. Folks are here now. I'm going to step out so you can take a look. A lot of people filing in, the supporters here for John Fleming, waiting for the results of this runoff election. Folks just coming in, sitting down, talking to each other. They've got some snacks and some drinks, and they're getting their fellowship on before they get the results. It is the final step, though, in a hard-fought Republican primary for Louisiana's open U.S. Senate seat. Former Congressman and current State Treasurer John Fleming has campaigned on his conservative record, highlighting issues like border security, government spending, and opposition to carbon capture projects. Both Fleming and Congresswoman Julia Letlow have aligned themselves with President Donald Trump's agenda throughout the campaign, while drawing distinctions on their records and priorities. Just before this party began, John Fleming was here in the room with us, and he had this to say about how he's feeling about tonight's election.
Well, of course, it's a tight race, no question about it, and it's whoever gets their voters out that's going to win this race. Our voters tend to be more MAGA and more conservative, and they tend to be, we think, more enthusiastic based on our polling, people who support us. But there are also others, independents and others, that are very excited about our campaign as well. So I think it's going to be a broad mix of voters tonight.
A broad mix, and the supporters that are here today tell us that they are excited about John Fleming and hope that he is victorious tonight. So I'm sure as the night goes on, they tell me there will be some music and there'll be a good time, especially if he is the winner of tonight's election. I'll send that back to you. For now, in Baton Rouge, Whitney Miller, WWL, Louisiana.
All right, Whitney, still pretty early in the night. All right, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. And now to another race that we're watching. Alyssa Curtis has a closer look at the St. Tammany millage renewal that would benefit the Sheriff's Department and the arrest of former Sheriff Randy Smith for a steakhouse assault. Alyssa, what can you tell us about how this could impact the result tonight?
Yeah, Devin, voters I've spoken to today and this evening have mixed reactions and mixed feelings, both to the millage renewal and Randy Smith's arrest and subsequent guilty plea. Now, there haven't been a lot of voters here tonight, especially at this polling location. We are at Slidell High School. I talked to a few of the poll workers. They said it's been a slow day, and I think that has seemingly continued throughout the evening while we were here. We did see a bit of a last-minute voter kind of influx over the past 30 minutes or so. But again, slow day here. People I've spoken to say that, again, mixed reactions. One woman I spoke to say that while Randy Smith did the correct thing in resigning, his actions should not reflect the work of the other members of the sheriff's office. So she voted yes on that millage renewal. Meanwhile, another voter I spoke to said that they do not like the direction that the sheriff's office is going to, and while they're happy that Randy Smith resigned, they say that they still do not have confidence in the sheriff's office. Again, this millage renewal would generate more than $13 million per year for the next 10 years starting in 2028. And St. Tammany Parish officials say that most of that money would go towards benefits and salaries of sheriff's office employees, with some other things like equipment and operational expenses. So we're going to have to watch and see very closely how this turns out. I think as we've spoken to members of not only officials here in St. Tammany Parish, but also voters over the past week or so as we've been watching what's been happening with Randy Smith. Again, a lot of mixed emotions, so we're going to have to take a close eye on that. I know St. Tammany officials are watching this race very closely. Some people say that this millage renewal is essential to keep the sheriff's office up and running. So again, high stakes here, especially for St. Tammany Parish officials. Of course, we'll keep you guys updated, and as soon as we know the results of that millage renewal election, we'll let you guys know. For now, reporting live at Slidell High, Alyssa Curtis, WWL Louisiana.
All right, Alyssa, thank you so much. High stakes is right. And Katie, you know we're going to be checking in with everybody, doing live reports with all of our reporters throughout the night at all of their various headquarters.
Yeah, it should get interesting in the next, I would say, 30 minutes to an hour. So we look forward to seeing what's happening out there in just a little bit. But we want to get back to our analysts tonight. And we, of course, have Dr. Silas Lee, and we have Ron Fauché, a political pollster and political analyst here. You guys have some initial results. What are you seeing, Ron?
We can call right now the Democratic primary for the United States Senate.
Okay.
Jamie Davis is going to win the Democratic primary.
Okay.
He has a big lead over Gary Crockett.
Okay.
And so that's...
Even just in early votes, you can already tell.
These are already early votes, but they give us a sample of the whole state. And his margin is so big in so many places that he will win it.
That you're comfortable in calling that.
And there's nothing surprising about it. He had the support of the Democratic Party, the organization, and started off, I think, better known and had a little more of a campaign. You know, nobody has been looking at the Democratic primary because nobody thinks the Democrat will win. But there's, in the primary, there was 345,000 people who voted in the Democratic primary and 400,000 who voted in the Republican primary. And that was with Bill Cassidy on the ballot.
Interesting.
So you're getting plenty of Democrats voting in the Democratic primary. And now there's more Republicans, as you'd expect, because that's where most of the campaign activity was. But there's still a pretty good number of Democrats voting in that.
Do you think that had something to do with the Trump endorsement and how that all played out? Did that energize Democratic voters?
Yes, I think it did. And I think the issue, and Silas can can give us more on this, but the reapportionment issue,
Yes.
how Congress would be reapportioned, I think that's really what lit the fuse there.
And what do you think that means for this election and then, of course, the November election moving ahead?
Well, moving ahead to November, it's a new race. And when you look at previous history, it indicates that for the Democrats in particular, the party has changed, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. We're back to resources, the ability to build a coalition and get a message out, and it's about turnout. In this particular case, not just on election day, but early vote turnout. And those are the critical elements that all require money, resources, and a strategy to get voters and build that coalition. Big difference too is that Democratic voters are more concentrated than Republican voters throughout the state. So there's opportunity, yet at the same time, big challenges.
Now, usually we don't see a lot of outside money flowing into these, the final runoff races, the final segment of this election cycle, because of the fact that people just assume that Louisiana will be a red state. Do you think that there's a chance, looking at those numbers from the primary, the initial primary?
No.
No. Okay.
I think it will be a red state in this election. I think the Republicans will ultimately win the Senate race.
Okay.
Even though they're split up right now, they're pretty hot at one another. But they'll come together and vote Republican.
They'll vote Republican, you think?
And keep in mind, the National Party will have to funnel some money to the states, but there are so many other competitive races nationally. When you look at Georgia, when you look at Texas, you look at Florida. Therefore, they will have to measure where they have the best chance of winning. And they're trying to build and also flip some states from red to blue. So money coming in may not be as much or what they would like. And the state party needs money too.
Do we see, based on the primaries that have been held so far, any indication of what this midterm referendum on President Trump is going to look like come November?
Well,
Any idea?
that's going to, there's a lot that has to happen between now and November nationally. So we have to wait and see. But, the interesting thing about Donald Trump, and a lot of people I talk to have trouble accepting this, is that no matter what he does, good or bad, popular or unpopular, his numbers hardly ever change. And, over time they may slide some, but they really don't change that much. I do want to add one thing at this point. In the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate, Julia Letlow is leading Fleming by about 8 percentage points, so about 54 to 46.
Wow, that's pretty close.
That's pretty close, but if it holds up, as it did in the primary, then she's got the advantage at this point.
Okay.
Let me reflect just on one. She carried 52 of the 64 parishes in the primary. It'll be interesting to see how she is able to hold on to that number of parishes, as well as where the Cassidy vote's going.
That's a good question.
So will they split, some to Letlow, some to Fleming, and by what percentage?
You think none of those votes are going to the Democrats?
I don't see.
No, you don't see that happening?
Not really.
Not in Louisiana,
with voters, you have to really court them.
They can't go to the
Oh, right
Democrats.
now they can't.
Right now,
Right, yeah.
right.
But in the general election,
Well,
they
sure,
can.
they can vote
They can-
anyway.
in general,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
right now.
But it won't go.
It won't
Most
go.
of them won't go
No.
to. They'll stay home or not.
Okay.
Looking at East Baton Rouge, and this is really the city of Baton Rouge plus surrounds. The early vote and the absentee vote is showing Fleming ahead by a small margin. Now, the reason why that's maybe significant is East Baton Rouge is the home parish of Bill Cassidy. Now, he didn't do that great there in the primary, but it is the home parish of Bill Cassidy. So, throughout the night, we'll be looking for indications that Cassidy's vote is going one way or another. And that may be an indication that Fleming maybe has a little advantage in East Baton Rouge, but we don't know yet.
Is Cassidy playing a role here tonight, do you think?
No.
No.
I really don't think he is. I mean, Cassidy's voters will certainly play a role. They'll decide who wins the nomination. But in talking to them, I haven't seen any internal polling data. But anecdotally, I found most Cassidy voters were either undecided on who they'd vote for or didn't intend to vote. So
A protest vote, if you will.
really as a protest vote by not voting.
Interesting.
The other
Okay.
thing is some other casative voters said they could live with either one.
Right.
And you hear some people say 6, 7. Well, that's what you have here with some other casative voters. They can say, well, I don't see a whole lot of difference. It's the question of the anti-Trump casative voters. Where are they going?
That's a good question, and I guess we'll have to see as this night moves on. Some other important things that are on the ballot in different municipalities. Of course, there are a number of tax renewals and tax measures. What does it mean when we're looking at a lower turnout election for those money questions? Ron?
I had studied this some years ago and basically found out that the lower the turnout, the better chance these had in most places, but it wasn't unanimous.
Okay.
And you can't always tell. And it depends on the kind of campaigns run. And it's very easy for local government officials who want to pass a tax to screw up the campaign because they make it about them and the politicians, and all of a sudden their negatives are added to the issue's negatives. It's better if campaigns sort of run as a civic campaign, you know, and give people the facts and not play politics with it.
Well, St. Tammany.
And they all, well, that's right. That's a good example.
Yep.
And so they all don't do that.
Yeah, and St. Tammany, you know, didn't choose to do that, but, you know, the actions of Randy Smith, his arrest, may play a role tonight.
Right.
But look at
Absolutely.
this. These are numbers in from St. Tammany Parish. 66% of voters there so far saying yes to that millage renewal for the sheriff's office, 34% no. Of course, this is just the beginning of the night, but is there anything that we can glean from that, Dr. Lee?
Well, in the past, when a couple of millage elections I've done, and we never had a reality show environment like we have in this particular case, where the principal law enforcement person that's supporting the millage gets involved in the incident, and only one thing is on the ballot: renewal of the millage, not a personality. Therefore, it's important to keep voters focused on it's a renewal.
The issue,
An issue, it's not a new tax, and it's about public safety. And they can relate to the cost of living challenges. That's what they're focusing on. So that might help it. And a lot of people voted before all this happened, too.
That's true.
So
Early voting was
therefore,
first.
that helps it in many ways. And they also purged the office to a large degree. You don't have the sheriff there, the deputy, somebody else I think has been replaced. So they're starting from a clean slate, and they can say, well, you can see everything we're doing right now, clean slate. Can you trust us?
And it's interesting because a lot of times when these millage renewals are up, people who don't want to pay taxes and don't ever want to see anything renewed or increased in areas will convince people that a renewal is actually a new tax because there wouldn't be a tax if you didn't renew this tax. And they have had other, you know, tax measures also for law enforcement and for the DA's office and other things over in St. Tammany that have failed over and over again. I mean, I think that has been a very big problem for Randy Smith in recent years. They've had a lot of budget cuts for that reason. And now we see this winning so far tonight. What can we say about those two things?
Well, one thing, if it does win by anything close to that margin we just saw, which was about 2-1, I think what it probably says is the voters are saying, okay, that's over with, it ended, you know, now let's get on with it, and we're endorsing, in effect, the solution. Not worried about the problem so much.
Gotcha. St.
That's
Tammany,
what it would say if it happens.
pretty low pro-law enforcement over there as well. I mean, that's another factor.
The personality is not on the ballot.
That's off.
And not present, as well as they have clean house in terms of the top administrators. And fear of crime. People are concerned about public safety and affordability. And that ties into those two issues.
If Randy Smith hadn't stepped down, do you think we would be seeing a different result tonight?
Maybe not, because early vote for one, and you have to be very strategic with this in keeping voters focused. Yes, it is sensational, it's tabloid, but at the same time, he is not on the ballot.
Right.
He is not on the ballot. We also, of course, are watching the Public Service Commission. This has become a hot race. Lots of negative ads flying back and forth between, John Young and Stephanie Hilferty tonight. Those are the two that most people are watching. And what can you guys tell us about that particular race and what you expect to see tonight? They're both pretty significant, politicians within the party running for this seat.
Well, they both have one, name recognition. They are known. Young is resurrecting his legacy. However, at the same time, public service in reference to what people are concerned about, the cost of energy, utilities. And it's going to be interesting to see which one can articulate a vision in managing the cost of that more effectively with voters, identifying those voters and getting them out, and who they trust to do it more.
What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, I think that's true. Young has been elected parish-wide in Jefferson, so he has had a bigger base. Hilferty has only been elected in a state legislative district, but she's got most of the political endorsements, overwhelmingly so. When John Young was parish president in Jefferson, people used to say, nobody likes John Young except the voters, because the politicians didn't like him and he got elected. Then he ran for lieutenant governor and he lost. And then he ran for parish president again and lost by a fairly significant margin against Cindy Shang, the incumbent now. So I think most of the people in politics expect Hilferty to win a close race. But that, I haven't seen any polling. Maybe Silas has.
I've heard about some polling. However, you have to be very cautious in what I term engaging in reruns.
Okay.
And because the voters tend to have a very limited appetite for that.
Okay.
And they start to sour on the constant reruns. She was a very effective opponent, so we cannot deny that. And it was a tough, competitive, and dirty race. They had some mudslinging going on.
They did.
And that now, what will be the return on that? We have to see. And that's something we can talk about because the mudslinging was also in the U.S. Senate race.
Yes. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute.
Yes.
Pause right there because we want to check back in with our field crew. So let's go over to Devin Bartolotta again to get the latest from them and see how those parties are going. Devin.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. We are going to check back in with that U.S. Senate race. Brandon Walker is at Julia Letlow's election night headquarters in Baton Rouge. And now that we are having some results coming in, Brandon, what is the mood like there? What are you seeing?
Yeah, good evening to you, Devin. Yes, so we're getting the first results in, and the mood here is just about what it was when we saw you earlier. I'm going to step out of the shot again. We don't have much of a view from where we are, again, as we're still waiting for the crowd to come in, but photojournalist Rick Neese-Riggins is giving you a lay of the land right now. As you can see that, people are pretty moderate in terms of how they feel right now. Nothing about which to really cry over or nothing to really cheer as we see those first numbers coming in. Listen, most of the people here tonight say that they are here because they are here to celebrate who they say will be a victor tonight. Coming into this a winner, coming into tonight they say will ultimately be the solution here, hoping that they will walk away here with a Senator Julia Letlow, or at least going on to represent the Republican Party, as the Republican Party does hope to continue to represent Louisiana in the U.S. Senate. Letlow hoping to replace outgoing Senator Bill Cassidy. That has been the mood here tonight, and when we talk to supporters about why they are here, they say that Congresswoman Letlow is the person that Louisiana needs to move forward, in part because of President Trump's endorsement and where the country is in terms of where the party is. So again, we're watching those numbers, Devin, see where things come. But Ron was pointing to that talk about voter turnout with Katie and what that could mean with State Treasurer John Fleming, because absent of the initial race here, which got us to this point in the runoff, we're seeing those polling numbers push Letlow and Fleming closer together. When you look at their campaign coffers, they're very close together in terms of the money. The difference is when you talk about those PACs. Having the president's endorsement means that Letlow does have more money in that sense in the PACs, but the actual campaigns are about what and what. Fleming is hoping that this grassroots approach, as he puts it, puts him in the victor chair, jumping over Congresswoman Letlow, but it's just a matter of what voters will see going into this. Recognition among both is about what and what, so it's a question of who turns out at the polls tonight and where they stand as far as the issues are concerned. Which candidate, according to those who are voting, is more in line with President Donald Trump, which isn't, or if that isn't your thing, which candidate they think is more in line with Louisiana values outside of where they see the president standing. Again, that remains to be seen tonight as we are waiting for the Congresswoman to get here and greet her supporters in Baton Rouge. Watching those results, we'll be here throughout the evening, let you know how things go. But for now, let's send things back to you, Devin.
All right, some excellent context there to keep in mind, Brandon. Thank you so much. Now, her opponent is State Treasurer John Fleming, as Brandon mentioned. He's also having his watch party in Baton Rouge tonight, and that's where Whitney Miller is live tonight. Whitney, how are things going there? We know it's very early in the night. There's still a lot of numbers to come in.
Right, still a lot of numbers to come in, so the mood is still very good here. I'll step out of the frame. Folks are still excited. They believe that this is a very close race, so no matter that they're from the screen, it looks like just a touch behind, they still feel like he can make that up because there are still numbers to come in. Very jovial. People in here are just excited, actually, for this race. So they felt like when Cassidy was kicked out of this race, they felt like that really upped Fleming's chances. So they're very excited still. The spirits are still high here. Everyone I've talked to so far believes that he can knock out a win tonight. Fleming is not here in the room. He is in his war room, as he calls it, but he was down here earlier today, and he told us that just because Julia Letlow is endorsed by the president, he says that he and the president had a conversation shortly after the endorsement, and he and the president are still in good terms, and he's also kind of reaching out to the voters that support the president for them to also support him. So he does feel like he has those supporters in his with support for him. So he feels like he can still knock out a win, and the spirit here is very much high. So nobody's down in here yet. For now, in Baton Rouge, Whitney Miller, WWL Louisiana.
All right, Whitney, thank you so much. We'll see how far that endorsement carries him and also how turnout could affect things. So we're going to go back to our analysts. I'm interested to hear what your takes are on some of these early returns over there.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk to, of course, Dr. Silas Lee and Ron Fauci, if you're just joining us. And, you know, one of the things that you all talked about is the mudslinging. We'll get to that in just a second. Want to talk more about that. But, Ron, you're seeing some new numbers?
Yeah, a couple of things that I thought were interesting. St. Tammany Parish is a very large parish statewide, one of the largest. And it's a heavy Republican parish. So if you're running statewide as a Republican, you want to win St. Tammany Parish. And at this point, Letlow is beating Fleming 59% to 41% in St. Tammany Parish. So that's good news for her. And also the same thing for Stephanie Hilferty in the Public Service Commission primary. It shows her beating Young 63 to 37 in St. Tammany Parish.
Wow, that's significant.
So that's a both of those are pieces of good news for these candidates.
St. Tammany, I think, well, I'm speculating here. You guys can tell me more, but St. Tammany had so many things of interest to them that were somewhat hot buttons over there. They're very interested in the BESE race. They're very interested in this Public Service Commission race. Of course, that millage renewal. And then, as you mentioned, it's a very Republican parish. So lots of interest in this U.S. Senate primary. Do you think that we're seeing a disproportionate turnout in St. Tammany? Is that something that we can tell yet?
It's hard to say because we're still dealing with mostly early votes, and it's hard. So I wouldn't want to get into that. But also looking at Jefferson Parish, which of course is one of the state's biggest parishes. It has a lot of Republicans in it, and at this point, Letlow is leading Fleming 57 to 43 in Jefferson Parish. That's good news for her.
Yes.
And Stephanie Hilferty, interestingly enough, is leading Jefferson Parish 56 to 44. Now, John Young was the former parish president of Jefferson. So if he can't do better than that in this portion of Jefferson Parish, that's not good news.
It looks like about 20% of votes counted so far in Jefferson Parish, so that's a pretty significant chunk for you to really kind of wrap your head around.
And like we talk about often, and this doesn't always work, but when you look at these early votes, which were cast statewide or district-wide, it's almost like a poll sample.
Right.
It's not precise, but it's almost like a poll sample because it's not just coming from one place, it's coming from everything. And so it can give you an indication. If you remember on May 16th, you know, the early numbers showed Letlow ahead, Fleming second, and Cassidy third, and that's the way it ended up.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I guess we'll have to see tonight. Dr. Lee,
You know,
something to
right
add?
now, we're at 20-some%, I think.
Yeah.
So let's look at the trends that will be established, 20%, 33, 50, and if this is any indication as to what it is a prelude to once we approach close to 50, that can spell either victory or defeat for one of the candidates. But we see trends right now where Letlow is able to maintain a lead, and it's critical that she was able to build some of that lead in parishes such as St. Tammany and Jefferson. St. Tammany also has some collateral issues that help mobilize turnout that you did not have in other communities too.
Right.
It'll be interesting
And that's
to see.
important to look at.
But we're not seeing a whole lot of back and forth with the numbers. You know, sometimes when races are a lot closer, we'll sit here and it'll be like,
Well, and there's a reason for that.
Back and forth.
There's a reason for that, because in a general election like we're used to, you've got Democrats, Republicans,
Yeah, that makes
blacks,
sense.
whites, who have different voting patterns.
Yeah.
Here, we're basically just looking at Republicans.
Republicans, right.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference where in general elections, you say, well, certain areas are heavily Democratic, heavily Republican, and we have to see what's going to happen with that particular area. Well, that's not the case here. Close runoff.
The Public Service Commission race, as you just mentioned, you know, that's a district that's pretty large. I mean, it's when you look at which parishes are included, it's parts of Jefferson, Livingston, Orleans, St. Charles, all of Plaquemines, St. Bernard, St. Helena, St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, and Washington parishes.
Yeah, it covers all these places in southeast Louisiana.
So when we look at those numbers, can we extrapolate anything about the U.S. Senate race based on what's in from the Public Service Commission yet?
I would be careful.
Yeah.
I'd be careful, but it is covering a pretty good range, and looking at the, I think the numbers so far are good for Letlow. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And we'd have to see something good for Fleming to change that point of view.
To change
also
that.
think the numbers so far is good for Hilferty over Young at this point.
It's interesting.
Let's see what happens when we get to 40 and 50%.
Right.
And if that
Right.
trend continues that we see right now, then that will give us a good indication that, well, we might be going home early.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the thing about the public service races is parishes are important.
Yes.
Because some of these candidates are very well known in parishes, and some of them aren't known at all in some of these parishes, which is why I think if Hilferty is in fact has a clear lead in Jefferson Parish, where they're both known, particularly John Young, who was elected parish-wide before, then that's a good sign for her.
Yeah, and those numbers are pretty skewed that we're looking at right
Right,
there, at
right.
least at this point in the night.
2-1.
Something, what's that?
2-1. That's
Yeah. Hilferty, 56% in Jefferson Parish, my producer's telling me, so that is significant there as well.
Yep.
Something that we haven't really talked about yet is this BESE board race, which has gotten a lot of interest. Former Congressman Joseph Gow, of course, running against Ellie Schroder, who is the wife of a former state representative, state treasurer.
Right.
Yes.
And state representative.
And state representative, yes. But, you know, so two pretty heavy hitters in terms of like their political backing.
Yeah.
And it's created for quite an interesting race among people like out in the community. What are you both hearing about this race, and what are you thinking looking at these numbers so far?
Well, first of all, I don't think a lot of voters are really watching that much. So it's kind of hard to get a feel for it. I mean, Gow had been elected to the U.S. Congress. He beat Bill Jefferson, which was a big race. It was an extraordinary race.
It was.
Because a Republican beat a Democrat in a highly Democratic district, but because of Bill Jefferson's personal problems. And then 2 years later, he came back and was defeated in a landslide. And ever since then, Gow has been looking for some place to land, and so far hasn't been able to do it. He may be able to do it tonight. One thing that I did see a few minutes ago is in St. Tammany Parish, which is where the Schroders live. I believe they still live in the Covington area. I'm not sure about that, but that's where they were from. She's leading. Ellie Schroder is leading Gow in St. Tammany, but not by that big of a margin. So it means that could very well still be in play.
You know, the interesting thing about this race, one, is very close. Two, when you reflect on what happened with Gow in '06, he won because closed primary.
Yep.
Right.
A lot of people thought because Bill Jefferson beat the other Democrat who happened to be
Helena Moreno. Yes.
that he won the re-election.
Right.
And they completely forgot about, oh, we have another election to go. And they didn't vote. And that is why you have Gow. And you also notice with this particular race, they pull out all of the emotional attack themes, Obama and DEI, and they attack Gow for that. So we have to see if he is able to hold on to that 51-49, and that's a very close number. And as more results come in, we'll see how much that changes.
I believe he was the first Vietnamese member of Congress.
Yes, he
made
was.
history in that election, both
He
in
did.
New Orleans and
Nationwide.
in the U.S. Yes.
Yes.
So his name is pretty well known for a lot of people around here.
They remember that.
Yeah.
They may not remember all the other sidebar issues that led up to it.
Well, there were a lot of sidebar issues with Bill Jefferson, and
That
of course,
was-
when
that was the
Gow
time.
went to Congress, he was sort of in the middle of trying to vote with the Republican Party in a Democratic district, so he gave President Obama some votes, and that killed him with his Republican base.
Yeah.
And the fact that when Cedric Richmond came in, he wiped him out in the Democrats, so he was done.
And that's what they're attacking Gow on in the commercials.
That's right.
That he supported the Affordable Care Act.
Well, right now it looks like Gow is leading Schroder
So let's
at
see
this
what
point.
happens.
So
Yes.
we'll have to see what happens on that one.
And I would say that the statewide totals have Letlow beating Fleming 55-45, a 10-point lead.
Is that significant that it's 10
Yes.
points
Yes.
at this point in the night?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Yeah, closer we get to 50.
Right.
If there is any change in that.
Yeah.
And if she holds on to 50, 55, and we had 55%
It's
return.
done. It's done.
Yeah.
What you mentioned that the Republican Party has changed, Silas.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean that the Republican Party has changed? Even though, as Ron mentioned, Donald Trump's numbers aren't going up and down a whole lot in terms of, I guess, his approval rating, but yet you feel like the Republican Party has changed?
Well, it's statewide in particular, and even nationally, but let's look at statewide. It's a populist, conservative, Republican base. And in the past, you had a strong business influence. It's still there, but it is not as prominent as it was before. So it's populist, conservative, business influence, and you had an anti-Trump, and you still do have some anti-Trump Republicans. What role they play, we don't know. But the growth of populist conservatism as promoted by Trump, this integration of social issues as well as nationalism, we have a very conservative electorate in terms of the Republican Party that is very dispersed compared to the Democratic Party. And that's been the big change. The other issue is to think back to 1992. Bill Jefferson. 2024, you had former Governor Edwards, John Bell Edwards. So we've had Democrats, but the demographics of the state change as well as the ideology of many voters. And the Democrats lost a significant number of working class voters in the process. So all those elements have changed.
And the big thing in Louisiana is in South Louisiana.
Yeah.
South Louisiana was always one step to the left of the rest of the state. Those were the parishes that elected Edwin Edwards 4 times and John Breaux. And even Bennett Johnston, even though Bennett wasn't from South Louisiana, he was from North Louisiana, but he did well there in his Senate races, not in the governor's race, but the Senate races. But after Bill Clinton was elected, there was a big shift in South Louisiana, and they started voting just like the white voters in South Louisiana started voting like white voters across the state and across the South. And they didn't have that eclectic, sort of Cajun, Cajun allegiance to the Democratic Party, even though they were fairly conservative. They became out and out conservative Republicans.
Now, you mentioned that there is an anti-Trump faction or fragment within the Republican Party in Louisiana.
Small.
Now that Bill Cassidy has outwardly come out against Donald Trump on a number of key issues, do you think that people realized where Cassidy was going into the primary? Do you think that those people who may be anti-Trump would have voted for him had they known his full stance?
Probably not.
No?
But in this particular case, it was a small faction to begin with.
Okay.
And what Trump did was effectively remind voters that supported Letlow in particular, he needs her. She's a reliable vote. And Cassidy, unfortunately for him, he was the person who challenged Trump in reference to January the 6th, voted for his impeachment. So those are some factors that play into this. But populist, conservative, cultural values integrated with nationalism and other conservative values. And we have a very big evangelical base here too, and conservative Catholic
and you
base.
see, one of the things that people watching around the country, not just here,
Yes.
but it applies here and it applies to this race, is it looks like the Republican Party electorate is splitting a little bit between the MAGA vote, which is a populist Trump vote, but at the same time, the other people are more conservative than the MAGA voters, you see? And so it looks to me like in the end, the real conservative voters who are ideological purists, who are Christian conservatives, will be voting more for Fleming than Letlow. And Letlow will be getting the MAGA Trump vote. Now that's not a perfect division, but that looks like kind of where the Republican Party is going. And even if you look at the next presidential election, a lot of people are saying, well, J.D. Vance would be the MAGA candidate, and maybe Marco Rubio would be the conservative candidate, you see? Even though they're both conservatives,
Yes.
It's a different kind of conservatism. Just like on the Democratic side, they're all liberals. And but the progressive left, a lot of progressive left are now calling themselves socialist, and proudly so, versus sort of a more center-left vote, which still calls themselves Republicans. And we just saw James Carville the other day talk about how the party's in a schism, and he doesn't want to be in a socialist party. So that, so both of these parties have internal divisions right now, and the Republican Party, Donald Trump is in the middle of it. The Democratic Party, it's pure issues, really, because there's no personality that dominates the party.
It's interesting. It's a very interesting time in politics that we're experiencing right now.
We are in a time right now where voters have expressed and continue to express, and they've been saying it for the past couple of years, the highest level of frustration that they have endured for the past several years in terms of quality of life, survivability, affordability, all of those issues driving voters looking for a change, someone to fix the system. So that is why you have these divisions in the party. With the Republicans, will it be MAGA? Will it be those who are the legacy Republicans? Or will it be those who identify as Christian nationalists? With the Democrats, which way are they going to go in terms of being liberal or looking at talking about the kitchen table issues more? So the parties reflect the social climate, and the climate right now, I've used this term before, volatile, uncertain, complex, and it can change in a second.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens in November with the rest of the midterms around the country. But right now, tonight, let's take another look at those numbers. 25% now of precincts reporting. And what we see there is that Julia Letlow's lead seems to be growing over John Fleming. Any thoughts on that so far, Ron?
Well, ever since the beginning tonight, she had a lead statewide, and it was close.
Yes.
And then it got a little better, and it got a little better, and now it's got a little better again. So all these signs have been in her favor.
Okay.
And that goes back to what I mentioned about tracking. So 25%, let's see what happens at 45 and 60.
Right.
But I think by the time we get to 50-some%, we will have a very good idea, given the fact that it's a low turnout.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
And
not
we
a whole
don't have
lot of,
to-
we don't know how many votes are, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't have to wait for a certain parish to come in that
Yeah.
is traditionally an outlier. So therefore, it's easier to predict that, okay, we see a trend, and this trend looks like it's going to be a flat line and pretty steady.
And basically, you've got at this point most of the early vote absentee votes in, so we know that's in that number.
Okay.
And a little less than a third of the election day votes
Okay.
are in. So we're getting close to where Silas is talking about.
Okay. So we're knocking on the door
We're getting close
of an early
fast, too.
night. What?
We're getting close very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's moving quickly.
Yeah, it's moving quick.
It really is. My
Yeah.
producer's been keeping me updated as we've been talking, just like
Yeah.
it's 18%, it's 20%, it's 25%. So,
Right.
you know,
At
I think
8:55.
Yeah.
28 now.
See? Yeah.
8:55. So
Yeah.
I was wondering when we were going to get to see the first big, you know, slug of votes from today coming in,
Right.
and apparently it's right now,
They're coming in
8:53.
right now. Yeah.
Yep. So let's.
Well,
look
it
at-
was a short ballot, so they
Yes.
could count those numbers quickly.
That's true. Quick, you know, vote, and done.
It's computerized.
Let's take a look again. See, this is I guess a map of the U.S. Senate race, and you can see, you know, of course, those are Julia Letlow and John Fleming's districts or precincts that are coming in for them so far tonight. Again, we only have 28% of the total vote. I think that says 28%. It's very small on the monitor there, but it's 28% of the total precincts in so far. But you can see how much purple, which is Julia Letlow's color, is on that map so far, and how much green is on there for John Fleming. Can we glean anything from which parishes right now are purple and which ones are green?
Well, in the northern part of the state, it makes sense because in Letlow's congressional district, she's leading, looks like the whole thing, just about. And when Fleming was in Congress, because he was in Congress too some years ago, his vote, it looks like he's carrying a number of parishes in his old congressional district.
Okay.
So that's really what both candidates should be doing. But in the rest of the state, she's winning.
What is that little green one that's in the metro area? Is that Tangipahoa Parish? It's unclear. I can't tell.
Can't tell.
It's a small,
But
it's a small map on the screen.
No, that wouldn't be.
when you look at this, just looking at the map, it looks overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because the metropolitan areas really is the media areas that we're looking at. And that tells me that she is still able to basically grow her support.
Right.
That's the key element. She did that in the primary.
Right.
And we've seen right now, she has been able to consolidate some support
Right.
that she did not have in the primary. And as we get closer to 50%, I think it's going to be a key indicator that she will start to, in many ways, pull out more. And it was going to be a bigger challenge for Fleming to try to catch up. At this point right now, that's a pretty significant.
Yeah. If she wins tonight, how much of a feather in the cap is that for Donald Trump?
Well, he will make it a
will
big
make
feather. You know, I mean, he makes when he loses something a feather in his cap. So when he really wins something, he'll do it. And he's had he's frankly had a run of some big wins. He had that Senate win in Texas. He had, you know, if he has this one, which looks like is very possible, he came close to missing a couple of them, but he quickly endorsed everybody at the end to cover the situation. And so we'll see. But I think this will be seen as one more in a series of local elections that Donald Trump controlled the Republican vote.
And does that have an impact going into, you know, everything in November? In those
Well,
final
what it
races?
does have an impact on is Republican members of Congress. They see this and they say, uh-oh, we better be careful. Look what happened to John Cornyn. Look what happened to Bill Cassidy. You know, look what happened to Tom Tillis. He didn't even run again because he didn't think he could win his nomination. He was a Republican in North Carolina. So, it's all cementing the idea that Donald Trump is the end-all and be-all in the Republican Party.
We have to take each situation differently and look at it from the perspective of what was happening in the local environment. So in Louisiana, he got rid of Cassidy, and that was his main opponent in terms of anti-Trump.
Right.
Now you have two candidates that they were both fighting for, I'm close to Trump.
That vote, yeah.
And neither one was anti-Trump. So he can claim to win, yet at the same time, it was an environment where he didn't have anyone aggressively challenging him. That's a big difference here.
Right. And one thing I would add too is Letlow's victory would be a big feather in the cap for Governor Jeff Landry.
Yeah.
Yes.
He endorsed her, you know, at the very beginning, stuck with her the whole way, and if she wins, you know, not only is it a Trump victory, but it's a victory for the governor.
And what have his approval ratings been doing lately?
Well, Silas may have some better numbers, more recent numbers anyway.
I haven't seen anything new, but based on recent decisions, lack of funds, it's up and down. A lot of people have expressed a lot of displeasure in reference to the clerk of court's race, in reference to the loss of funding. So if you look at Orleans, the metro area, it may not be that strong. Outside of the metro area, then he runs in a safer environment than you have in the metro, definitely in Orleans. And it's volatile.
What about those amendment vote downs that we saw earlier? What about that part of this? Because a lot of people kind of looked at that as a referendum on
They
Jeff
didn't like
Landry.
the amendments.
They just didn't.
And they
like the
didn't understand the amendments either. That was the other thing. So those amendments, you have to be very careful in reference to how it's written, as well as what they are proposing to do or not achieve. And so many other things were happening in the political ecosystem that impacted opposition. You also had some opposition to the amendments too.
Okay. Well, that's something that we can continue talking about as we continue on through the night. But of course, we just mentioned that we are almost approaching 30% in the U.S. Senate race right now. We have Julia Letlow with a significant lead over John Fleming. You can see it again. We have 40% now in and 56% for Letlow at this point, 44% for John Fleming tonight. So it still appears that Julia Letlow is continuing to hold on to a significant margin over John Fleming. And these two say we would need to see some significant changes back the other direction.
Yeah, it's unlikely that would happen.
That in order to put this in the win column for John Fleming. So
you know what's happening now too? It looks like she is building a cushion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And we want to check in at the different headquarters in just a moment, but we want to go over to Devin Bartolotta to get that.
Hey guys, yeah, we are going to check in now with all the reporters that we have around the area. We've got Brandon Walker up in Baton Rouge with Congressman Julia Letlow's campaign, Whitney Miller also in Baton Rouge with Treasurer John Fleming's campaign. But we're going to start with Brandon, who is over at that party that they are hoping will eventually turn into a victory party. It still looks pretty empty around you. It's already 9 o'clock, Brandon. What is going on and how are they feeling, the people who are there?
Yeah, well, you know, part configuration of the room, Devin, also part who is here and who is not here. So yeah, as we showed you earlier, behind us, you've got the podium on the other side of what is a basketball court here. To my left is a bar area, and you've got people congregating, not necessarily a big crowd per se in terms of who's who. You've got a lot of Congresswoman Julia Letlow's supporters. Of course, her congressional district, Louisiana Congressional District 5, does not cover the New Orleans area. So a lot of the people you see here are not from the New Orleans area. Every now and then I go in just to go see who is who and what they're talking about and how they are doing, and they are feeling victorious. And they are feeling victorious for the most part because of the results that we are seeing coming in. Already showing a great advantage for Congresswoman Letlow, and depending on where you are in news sources, the race already being called for her. The Associated Press projecting right now that Letlow will win. And WWL right now officially, as we are live here on air, calling this race officially here for the Republican primary, who will go on to represent the Republican Party in the race for Senate from Louisiana. Congresswoman Julia Letlow will get that push here, according to our numbers here at WWL, calling it for you live. As far as that is concerned, we kind of saw this coming as far as that momentum is concerned in terms of what our experts have said too. Dr. Silas Lee, Ron Fauché, among others there, getting the president's endorsement. Of course, that saw us to say goodbye to now lame duck Senator Bill Cassidy and saying hello to what supporters here will hopefully be Senator Julia Letlow. The Congresswoman has not entered the room just yet. We have not heard from her, but again, did hear some cheers in the room a few minutes ago when the Associated Press called the race for her, and now here on WWL, we are calling the race for Congresswoman Julia Letlow. When you look at this and when you ask, well, what are voters looking for, it's a question of how strong the president's endorsement was, right, looking into this, and that's what our experts have talked about. But as far as who is more Trumpian, so to speak, among the two, you've got John Fleming, who says, hey, listen, not only am I too a former congressman, I worked within the Trump administration. So while I don't have his administration, I know his playbook. I'll function by way of it. However, Julia Letlow has been campaigning on what is a 15-point plan, as she puts it, and it is in line with the Trump doctrine. We are seeing that work toward her favor right now with WWL not calling the race for her. It's a matter of time before she does take the podium here to address her supporters in what is a very cheerful room here, just waiting for her to come out to address her supporters here in this room in Baton Rouge. Though for now, let's send things back to you. Again, projecting this race for Congresswoman Letlow, got a lot of people who were cheering a little earlier when those numbers were beginning to come in. So they are happy here, but the Congresswoman is yet to walk into the room to greet her supporters. So once that happens, and once we see who is here to support her, again, looking for those from the New Orleans area, not seeing that just yet, but we will be sure to bring that to you when we get it. Devin, let's send things back to you.
Absolutely, Brandon. We know that this is the point in the night when things change either for the better or the worse for whichever candidate you're with.
Yeah.
And obviously for Congresswoman Letlow, it has turned out to be a victory party there. Has there been any indication of when you might see her come out? Have you seen her at all tonight so far?
Yeah, that's a good question, Devin. No, as a matter of fact, I've been keeping up with her security team. Again, the configuration of the room, you can't see where they're stationed, but they are to my left here, about maybe 30 feet or so to my left, out of a little threshold where where it's believed where she is with her campaign right now, just watching those results come in. But we do not know when she's going to greet reporters, but it's looking like a matter of time here, again, with the numbers and everyone pretty much calling it for her right now. So we'll see what happens, but as soon as she does walk out to greet folks, we'll be sure to cut in and bring it to you.
All right, absolutely. Brandon, thank you so much. We know we're going to check in with you momentarily. It does seem like some people are starting to file in front of that podium, so I'm sure it's only a matter of time. Thank you so much. And with that, we are going to head over to Whitney Miller, who is also in Baton Rouge. She is at Treasurer John Fleming's campaign right now. And Whitney, you're there now as the race has been called for Letlow, his opponent. So I know that the Fleming campaign was hoping for a victory tonight, hanging on to some of the chance of good news, but how are things looking right now? What are people saying?
Yeah, so just a few minutes ago, before it was projected, there was a lot of people telling me they were anxious, but they were hopeful, still excited, still holding out hope till the end. With this projection, I was able to pop over and talk to one or two people who say they're a little disappointed with the numbers that are being called right now and the race being called. People are checking their phones, and you can kind of see when they get that message that they are seeming a little down. John Fleming actually walking into the room right now, and the folks are clapping for him. There he is greeting his supporters. Everyone's standing up, clapping for him. They did show out for him tonight in support of him, whether he won or lost. These folks say that he was the right man for this job, and so now he's coming down here to greet those who were supporting him. He told us earlier that even though Julia Letlow had the support of the president, he also had the support of the president. He said that his resume was the reason why he was the right man for this job. So there he is coming in now, greeting his supporters, walking around the room, talking to those folks. And he should possibly be giving a speech here shortly. He's making his way up to the podium. He's shaking hands with folks right now. I believe he's going to head to the podium to give some remarks. But of course, you know, everyone's going to stop and speak to him. Hold on one second. Let's see what happens here. Oh.
Okay, we are trying to figure out what's going on with the microphone there at John Fleming's headquarters, his party tonight. Hopefully we can get you his remarks and let everyone know out there exactly what he had to say. Of course, Julia Letlow projected by our analysts tonight to be the winner of that Republican primary heading to the main election that's coming up in November. But we want to talk about the Public Service Commission race because this was also a highly combative race between two candidates that are well known, especially in the Metro New Orleans area, John Young, Stephanie Hilferty, and we're ready to call it.
Yes, we're ready to call Stephanie Hilferty the winner. Her percentage is well ahead of John Young at this point, so she will be the new Public Service Commissioner in District 1.
Okay. Hold that thought. We want to go back over to John Fleming because I think we can hear him now, so let's hear what he has to say.
I'm going to be just as happy tomorrow as if I had won the election because my happiness does not depend on getting elected to office. My happiness depends on serving you, the people of Louisiana and the people of the United States. And I've done that for many years, first as a physician, then later, of course, in 8 years in Congress, 4 years in the President Trump's first administration, and now 2.5 years as your state treasurer. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. And yes, I love the heat of battle. I do. I love the combat. But it makes us stronger, and it makes us really better appreciators of what America is all about. And so I'm not going to speak long. I'm not going to wax philosophical tonight or anything like that. The contest for this primary is over, and now it's on to the general election, which of course will be in November. And we want to, again, continue to make America strong by sending the best of the best there and fighting for the freedoms, the things that our founding fathers prepared us for, and it's up to us to carry that on for the future. So I just want to say to you, good night. Thank you. Let's continue to stay in touch, and God bless each and every one of you tonight. Thank you.
That is John Fleming making his concession speech tonight as Julia Letlow is projected to be the winner tonight. Any quick thoughts? Julia Letlow, I know, is about to hit the microphone at her party tonight as well. So any quick thoughts before we head there?
Well, one thing is age. Letlow is 45, Fleming is 74, will be 75 next week. There seems to be a desire in the state and around the country to elect younger people, not older people, to public office. And for those of us with gray hair, we have to come to that conclusion.
Silas doesn't have that problem.
Well, no, he's ahead of all of us. But the other thing is She will be the third woman elected to the U.S. Senate from Louisiana. The first was Huey Long's wife, Rose McConnell Long, who was appointed to the Senate and then elected to fill out his term. Then there was Mary Landrieu, who served for 3 terms, and now Julia Letlow.
Okay. All right. Well, if she wins in November, that's what's going to happen. Of course, the Democrats also have a candidate that is going to be moving on. We already know who that is. So it will be an interesting race in November, although I can't imagine that we're going to see a lot of outside money coming in for this election.
For insurance purposes, you will.
You will?
You will, just to make sure that they are able to retain that seat. And yes, it's a safe seat in their perspective, but things can change. And we have to see the Democrats can mobilize in some cases. And
hold on one second, because I think we are actually about to hear from the victorious candidate tonight. Let's listen in.
Out to support this race, I am also so incredibly filled with gratitude for the greatest president this country has ever had, President Donald J. Trump. President Trump, thank you for encouraging me to get in this race. Thank you for your endorsement. Louisiana loves you. Now, I knew it was going to be a tough race, and it was. It was filled with trials. But I'm so proud to say that I am truly battle tested for November 3rd, and we are going to go win this thing! I want to thank my opponent, Dr. John Fleming, for running. And I just got off the phone with him, and I appreciate the phone call. Thank you so much for running, Dr. Fleming. I also want to say thank you to one of my very dear friends. Many of you know him, Governor Jeff Landry, for all of his support in this race. I know he's a friend to many of you, for my dear friend in the House, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, for believing me in day one. My friend up here on the podium with me, Attorney General Liz Murrill, for all her support and efforts. Many of you in this room know Congressman Clay Higgins to be a fighter for Louisiana and America. Thank you for your support. I also want to thank the first state representative to get behind my campaign, Roger Wilder. Thank you. Thank you. Now, this doesn't happen by a person alone. I have the most amazing team surrounding me. As you can see, all of them up on this stage. I have to say, first and foremost, thank you to my GC, Kyle Ruckert. I would not be here without you. And your wife, Linnell, thank y'all. Andrew Bouch has been with me since day one. You ran my campaign. I love you. Thank you to Katie, too, for her sacrifices. For John Bravender, where's Parker Carey? Woo, there he is. Catherine Jordahl. All the amazing social media, everything that you saw come out of our campaign, right here. Catherine, I'm so grateful for you. Jensen Young, you better be up on the stage. Where are you? Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I know Luke's shining down too. Javen, oh, can't forget to go. So grateful for you. Now, my official team's been working hard for my district, for Louisiana District 5. I want to give a shout out, of course, to my Chief of Staff, Ted Barrell, Ramona Martin, y'all know her, she's been working this district since day one. Lindsay Hadaway's up here, she's been helping me too. Lindsay Linares and Dane Guidry. If Dane is here, he is our veteran and he serves all of our veterans for Louisiana. Thank you for all you do. Appreciate you so much. I want to take a moment to thank my late husband, Luke. I would not be here on this stage if it weren't for him and the 20 plus years that he put in. I'm pretty sure he popped out of the womb knowing he wanted to run for Congress one day. And I'm so incredibly grateful that the Lord paved that way for him and that I was able to be by his side and learn from him. And one of the sweetest things that he taught me is that you can never forget that this is not your seat, it's the people's seat. And you are here to serve them and not the other way around. And if you never forget that this seat is not yours and you are here to listen to them first and foremost. and that guides every decision you make and every vote that you take. You really can do a great job for the people who you represent. So I just want to take a moment to thank my late husband and his family for all that they have endured in this race, and I'm so grateful for all the Letlows. I also want to thank two very special people in my life who are up on this stage, my mom and dad. They are my heroes. You want to talk about prayer warriors and spiritual champions? My sweet daddy, he knew that I was hurting. And he came in one day and he had this big bag. And what he had done, he had gone and found inspirational quotes and scriptures. And he printed each one out and meticulously cut out each little one and put it in a bag so that I could pick one out every single day that we had left in this race. And I have to read you today's inspirational quote that I read this morning, Dad. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God goes with you. Thank you. And last but not least, no, they're going to be last. I'm so grateful that the Lord put love in my life again. I'm so incredibly grateful to introduce y'all to Kevin Ainsworth. He's my rock. He has been with me today tonight. Hey, you've taken a lot of heat in this race, and you didn't deserve it. And I'm so incredibly grateful. Thank you for sticking by my side. I love you. Thank you. People ask me all the time, why in the world, Julia, would you put yourself through this? Why would you put your family through this? And you've heard me say it a million times, but I don't miss a beat. I quickly go to my why, and it's an 8-year-old little boy, Jeremiah John, and my 6-year-old daughter, Jacqueline. They are why I wake up each and every day with that fire in my belly to go fight for this country. I was just telling them the other day, we're about to celebrate a big birthday, right? How old are we turning? 250 years old. And I told them that, and they said, wow, we're so old. And I said, no, we are really a baby republic, but my goodness, isn't she worth fighting for? And I am so grateful that for all of you, because I have a feeling your why looks a lot like mine. It's your children, it's your grandchildren. They are the reason we get up and fight so hard. And I will continue that fight on to the Senate. I will fight for our families. I'll fight for our farmers. I'll fight for our teachers. I will fight for our parents. I'll fight for our law enforcement. And I will fight for everyone in this room. And we are just getting started, and I'm so incredibly grateful to all of you. Every breath I have left, I will be fighting for Louisiana. God bless you. God bless Louisiana. God bless President John J. Crockett. God bless the United States of America. Thank you all. Good job. Good job.
And as you can see, Congresswoman Julia Letlow greeting her parents right now, thanking them for their support as she addresses a crowd here in Baton Rouge, declaring victory tonight against State Treasurer John Fleming for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senator here in Louisiana. You can see Letlow there again, very victorious here, thanking the crowd for their support, but also pledging support to her late husband, Luke, who, as we know, initially ran for and won the Senate candidacy. As a matter of fact, with photojournalist Rick Nice-Riggins, I wonder if we can get this camera and try to, if you guys can stay with me, get over to the Congresswoman, see what she thinks about this as you stay with us. We are here live. Hi there, ma'am. Congratulations to you live on WWL. How do you feel right now tonight?
We're going to go right here. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're walking with the Congresswoman. As we do say, she is victorious tonight.
Okay. Can we all get in?
How do you feel about this victory?
This is such an incredible honor. I'm so grateful to go and fight for Louisiana in the Senate. We have another race November 3rd. Before I get there, I'm going to give it my all to go listen to the voters, listen to their concerns, earn their vote, and hopefully win the election November 3rd so I can go to the Senate and continue to fight just like I have in the House of Representatives.
You talked to Treasurer John.
Do you think that gives you the advantage in November?
You never think that you have an advantage. You always run against yourself and that you're running from behind. So I will continue to do that moving forward.
What was the conversation with Mr. Fleming?
Primary campaign, you were campaigning to on Republicans and Republicans only due to this new closed party primary system. Now you have to campaign to the entire state. Does your strategy change from this point forward?
I have always represented all the people of Louisiana in my district, and I will continue to do that and provide that messaging moving forward, but also listen to everyone in the state and hope to earn their vote.
Please walk us through the conversation with Mr. Fleming, ma'am. You said you spoke to him.
It was a wonderful conversation. He congratulated me on the win. It was very cordial, and I thanked him for running because it's hard to run. I understand that. Yes.
You said it was a tough race. What do you mean by that?
He said it was a tough race.
You said it was.
It's been a very tough race from day one. Since January, since I jumped in the race, it's been absolutely brutal. But, you know, it's always an honor to run. You know what you're getting into, and we are so glad that we're victorious tonight. Yes, sir.
Yes, the race turned out a lot closer, I think, than a lot of people anticipated. Why did that happen?
I don't think it turned out close at all. Yes. Yes.
Have you gotten to speak to the president since the victory?
I did. I just spoke to the president.
What did he say?
So grateful to chat with him. Again, we've built a long-standing relationship. I can't wait to work with him over on the Senate side. Yes.
You told me during an interview that they're nervous about you putting maybe politics ahead of people. What do you have to say for those voters that think that DC politics are going to trump the people of Louisiana?
I have always put the people first. Again, that's something that my late husband taught me. This is not my seat, it's the people's seat. I will listen to them first and always. Anybody else?
Is it something that you think is good for
Fleming's attacks work?
Yeah, races can be ugly at times. I wish that we could just run on our platforms and there was no negativity in races. That would be my dream moving forward. Hopefully we'll get there one day.
Is there such a thing ideologically between the two of you, between the president? So who is more Trumpian of the two that played a role in tonight's results?
I think you have to earn the president's endorsement, and I was so proud to do that.
What does that mean for Louisiana voters?
Oh, we worked so hard together, and his endorsement is really the most powerful endorsement in the world. I give him full credit for that, and I'm going to continue to fight for Louisiana. So, all right. Okay, thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all. Yes.
All right, there you have it, live here on air. As you can see, Congresswoman Julia Letlow greeting supporters here, speaking to reporters a couple minutes ago. Some news here from that. She did say that she spoke to President Donald Trump a few minutes ago, whom she says congratulated her on her victory here against State Treasurer John Fleming for the Republican nomination. Again, victorious here tonight, but there were questions here about just how much she would win, by what margin. Neither here nor there now, because she is in fact victorious, but the question going forward is, what does it mean to have the president's endorsement as the Republican nominee against the Democratic candidate going forward? Again, Congresswoman Letlow saying that any race is a hard one to run, but running against Mr. Fleming, she says, was a hard one too, in keeping with what the ideals are for Louisiana voters as far as the Republican Party is concerned. She says that she is ready to get to work and continue her work on Capitol Hill, just moving up another House of Congress here, moving up to Senate from Congress, as we continue to look live here at the Congresswoman greeting her supporters. Lots of people supportive here, a lot of smiles in this room in Baton Rouge, as again the Congresswoman declaring victory here in this runoff election against State Treasurer John Fleming for the Republican nomination for Senate. All smiles here in Baton Rouge among those who are supporting the Congresswoman. Katie, want to send things back to you, get some analysis from our folks, but again, a couple things that she did mention as we stay on this shot of her greeting her supporters here from photojournalist Rick Neese-Riggins. Spoke to President Donald Trump a couple minutes ago. He supports her in all of this, congratulated her on her victory. As you saw live here from the podium, the person to introduce the Congresswoman who hopes to be Louisiana's next senator was our Attorney General Liz Murrill. Liz Murrill says that the Congresswoman represents everything in line with the ideals of Louisiana, the governor and Liz Murrill. We will see going forward what voters have to decide now when we get the Democratic nominee and how things go forward. But you can see a united front here in Baton Rouge against a very victorious Julia Letlow. Back to you.
All right, interesting stuff. Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm curious if the governor was there tonight. I mean, we heard Liz Murrill made the speech. I'm not sure if Jeff Landry was there, but she did obviously thank the governor for his support throughout her campaign. Mm-hmm. Speaking with Donald Trump, he congratulated her as well. Mm-hmm. Frankly, it's a win for him, too.
Sure. And, you know, but one of the things I'd like to focus on is, why is it important for Louisiana? And one thing we have in Louisiana is we have a lot of poor people in the state. And we also have a lot of parishes and cities, big down to small, that have struggled to attract jobs, to build industries, to pay for their own local services. And whether anybody likes it or not, the truth is in many ways, we're a ward of the federal government. So we need strong, effective members of Congress from Louisiana, obviously the U.S. senators, and obviously our local congressmen, to be effective for the state. And that's what's important for the state. You know, what will she do, assuming she wins the general election, which is likely, it hasn't happened yet, but what will the next senator do about that?
Frankly, we didn't hear a lot from her in this campaign, and we haven't heard a lot of what her plans are, at least in terms of debates and speeches and things like that. And do you all think we're going to hear much from her now, from now until November?
No.
No, well, keep in mind, closed primary, closed runoff, focused on the hyper-partisan electorate. And you already know what they want and what they are thinking about. General election, this is where it should pivot right now.
Okay.
And that means that we have to get back to the quality of life issues. For the past several decades, we have ranked 48 and 49 in quality of life, education, health, and so forth.
Yes.
We didn't hear a lot of discussion about that. So that is where we will have to go. Quality of life issues, what will they do to address those concerns in terms of health, the economy, infrastructure, all those critical issues that people are challenged by every day.
And those should be conservative and liberal issues.
Yes.
You know, they might be a conservative position, a liberal position, but everybody needs to support a stronger economy. Everybody needs to support a stronger revenue base for the state, more job opportunities. We're losing population when comparable states are gaining, and we need to keep our younger people here. And when we survey and find out why younger people are leaving, they say because of lack of career opportunities, not just a job, they want a career. And also the lack of what they see opportunities for their children going to school.
Absolutely, and we're going to get much more from both of you as we continue our coverage throughout the night, but we want to take a quick break and we'll be right back after that. Welcome back, everyone. We are joining you now because, of course, we have an election night happening. And we now know that Congresswoman Julia Letlow is now going to be moving on to the main election that's happening in November. She will, of course, be facing a Democratic challenger. She is the nominee, defeating John Fleming, the state treasurer, tonight by a significant margin. So Julia Letlow is now the Republican nominee for Louisiana's U.S. Senate seat. Again, this will be moving on to the general election that happens in November. But joining me now here in the studio, we do have our two political analysts, Dr. Silas Lee and Ron Fauché, political pollster. These two are two of the biggest men in the know in Louisiana politics. So what do we take away from Julia Letlow's win tonight? Let's start with you, Ron.
Well, number one, Donald Trump continues his strength within the Republican Party. Every time Donald Trump has run for president in Louisiana, 3 times, he's gotten roughly between 58 and 60% of the vote. That's a strong lead. The last governor's race, The current governor, Republican governor, seen as perhaps the most conservative of the candidates in the field, won in the first primary. So clearly, conservative Republicanism has a hold on Louisiana politics as it is now. That always can change. Things change over time.
Yes.
But this fell within that. We had two conservative candidates, but the fact that it was Donald Trump's endorsed candidate who not only defeated Julia Letlow, but then turned around and defeated what may have been a more conservative Republican in John Fleming than Julia Letlow. So it's a victory for the president. It's a victory for the governor. And it's a victory, of course, for Julia Letlow, who still has to win the general election.
Absolutely, she does. And we're going to hear much more from you guys as we stream on WWL, our streaming app. We're going to continue that until our newscast that joins you at around 10 o'clock tonight. So that's the latest here. Of course, Julia Letlow is the big headline as we continue our election coverage over on our WWL streaming app. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here, of course, with Silas Lee and Ron Fauché, our two political analysts and pollsters who are two of the best in Louisiana politics, giving us their impressions of what has happened in Louisiana tonight. This, of course, is the second of the primaries, not something that Louisianians are really used to. That probably had an impact on turnout, wouldn't you say?
Closed primary and a closed runoff, and you attract the hyper-partisan segment of the electorate. So I'm not too surprised at all. And the fact that you eliminated the main competition, that was Bill Cassidy. It looks like some of the Cassidy voters went over to Julia Letlow's side, and she was able to continue her strength in reference to what she carried in the primary in this particular runoff.
That's interesting. You were saying something similar.
Yeah, you know, you look at it, she has a 14-point lead, which is roughly kind of about what she had in the primary, which means that the Cassidy vote, assuming it voted at the same level, basically split between the two.
Right.
And now when you get into the data, we may be able to find out more subtleties, but that's the bottom line. And everybody was asking, where will the Cassidy vote go? Well, they either stayed home or they split their votes between the two candidates.
Do you think, you said earlier, you thought there may be the possibility that a significant number of them actually did stay home and not vote for either?
Well, I think that is possible. I think we can look at that. Looks like the turnout is less, so we'll have to see. But you know, sometimes we overthink these things, and the numbers fall out pretty much the way you would have expected them to months ago without knowing anything about the campaign.
We're not talking
and I think that happened.
We're not talking a whole lot about the Democratic side either. We have a winner for the Democrats as well. Jamie Davis is the winner over Gary Crockett. Anything significant about that? I mean, obviously, Davis got the endorsement of the Democratic Party in Louisiana, but moving forward, what do we expect to see between Julia Letlow and Jamie Davis?
Well, I'm quite sure that they would like to have a debate, and she did not debate at all in this particular situation. And that's something Jeff Landry did not debate in reference to the governor's race. Now we will have a runoff between a Democrat and a Republican. It's going to be very important. Voters want to know where and how you will move the state forward and address some of the critical issues. We cannot talk about strictly allegiance to the president and not talk about issues impacting the quality of life and the long-term survival of this state.
I mean, you will have John Kennedy, of course, and then either Jamie Davis or Julia Letlow serving alongside him in the U.S. Senate. That pairing, does that mean anything to either of you? And can we
With John Kennedy and
Julia Letlow?
And a senator.
Well, when you have John Kennedy and Julia Letlow, I'm quite sure you will have less tension. However, if you have John Kennedy and Jamie Davis, then you will have polar opposites that will have different attitudes and philosophies in reference to the political, social, and economic agenda and the direction of this nation.
And that's different from when we had, say, Mary Landrieu as a senator. Even though she was on the opposite side of the aisle, she was a different kind of Democrat.
But and that brings up a point in reference to former Governor John Bell Edwards. We don't have the Democrats that we call the yellow dog Democrats that used to be very present in terms of the state politics. We don't have that anymore. It's more partisan. So that definitely has contributed to why you have a decreasing number of successful Democratic candidates statewide.
It's difficult, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it is, and that's why Louisiana is in the red column now. But one of the things I would like to say is about Jamie Davis, who won the Democratic nomination tonight. I don't know the man. I didn't know either candidate, just like I didn't know the two Republican candidates personally. But I think Jamie Davis deserves some accolades for starting off a statewide race on his own and ultimately winning it in a landslide for the Democratic nomination. He had two opponents, and he won the race pretty easily in the end. And you know that takes something.
Yeah, he truly is the definition of a grassroots
You don't
candidate.
just do that, but pressing a button, and he didn't have any help raising money for the most part, and it was a tough race for him. So, and a lot of people voted in the Democratic primary. It wasn't like, you know, we spent so much time talking about the Republican primary, but I think he accomplished something within the Democratic Party. Now, the odds that he wins the election are slim to none. Let's be candid, But I think that needs to be said.
Yeah, I mean, the congressional maps really energized voters the first time around when we were talking about this. Does that come into play, you think, as we move forward to November when you have those congressional elections also happening?
That's an element of it. The other component will be, as Ryan just said, Jamie Davis was able to establish an emotional connection, and he was visible. He will have to do that more aggressively in these resources in this runoff between him as well as how he will address the issues. But he definitely deserves credit for the ability to stimulate and get out the vote. He won by 80%.
Yeah.
That's extremely
That's
significant.
not easy to do.
That's not easy to do. And they eliminated a third person. But now we are in the final chapter. And this is where you have to have the resources and the strategy. It can be done, and believe me, this is something that everyone will be watching, because a lot of people have almost said, oh, it's over. It's not over yet.
Not over
It hasn't
yet.
even started yet.
Yeah, politics these days, you just never know what's going to happen. It feels like every night on the news.
It's very volatile.
It is very volatile. Yeah, that's the perfect word for it. We did have a lot of other races that we should probably touch on a little bit for those who are just joining us after that cut-in. First of all, the Public Service Commission race. We declared Stephanie Hilferty the winner of that race about an hour ago now. Talk about that, and were you surprised by those results and how skewed that race was between her and John Young?
No, not really. She seemed to run a better campaign. She certainly had more political support And so it wasn't a surprise. That's not taking anything against John Young. It's just that I just thought she had a better campaign from the beginning. But the thing, I've always found when you have these young people like she is, who get elected, where are they going in the future? And I think she's somebody who potentially does have a future. And what I mean by that is we might be seeing her run for, lieutenant governor, a secretary of state, a state treasurer, or governor maybe at some point along the way. So she's somebody to watch for the future. And as Silas was talking about earlier, public utilities is becoming again a bigger issue.
Yes.
With all of these data centers and everything at play with utility rates, and when Huey Long was on the Public Service Commission and Jimmy Davis was on the Public Service Commission, they used those jobs to catapult them to become governor, and John McKithen as well. And for a long time now, we haven't had a lot of public activity on the Public Service Commission, but now we could. So the people who are on that commission could become really important state leaders.
Well, it's also, you have not only the data centers, you have the hardening of the grid and all of those questions after Hurricane Ida and lawsuits against Entergy over it. And, it really has become, no pun intended, a hot button issue.
It is. Sure it is.
Among average people, which is also interesting.
It's a part of our daily lives 24/7. We cannot get away from it. And we live and die based on access to technology and the utility infrastructure. And another point about that race, I mentioned it earlier, voters tend to lose their affection, appeal, and appetite for rerun candidates. And I think that's something that hurt John Young. Because once you keep going back, and you're not successful, or you take time off and you decide to re-enter, voters say, well, you've done it before, let's look in another direction. And looking at those results, it tells the story.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of mudslinging, both in that campaign and the Senate race. And Silas, you said AI played a role here. Talk about that a little bit, how ironic that is, given the public utilities and these data centers, which are to use AI.
Right.
Well, this is the first statewide campaign and local where we saw the introduction of AI in those commercials. So the commercial with John Fleming transporting the immigrants, that was AI. Well, you had another commercial where they attacked Fleming and they talked about his age. Well, you saw one part of the commercial, he looked older. The other part of the commercial, he didn't. You saw AI. So we are in an era now where AI is going to infiltrate the electoral system, and we have to be very careful about that, because not everything in AI that might be produced and consumed is accurate. But it is entertaining. Because California had an election for mayor where AI was not only dominant, but it took a different turn in the creativity of it. And that's what you saw here.
You also have outside interests, I would think, that will be using AI, especially in the national races. And as we move forward.
Well, the AI companies themselves are pouring millions into political campaigns right now.
Yes.
And you know why? Regulation.
Right.
There you go.
That's why.
Public Service Commission.
That's it.
Races just like this one that we saw decided tonight. So it's certainly a factor, and one that we didn't even have to deal with even 4 years ago when we were talking about.
Now we have to deal with AI in so many aspects of our daily lives.
Yes. Another race that we have touched on a little bit is the BESE race, the school board, the agency that oversees education statewide. We saw a former Congressman, Joseph Gao, of course, running against Ellie Schroder, who is the wife of a former state treasurer who has an education background. These two squaring off. The race is looking pretty close there.
Yeah, Joseph Gao looks like he's ahead, so he may have now found a place to land for his political career. We'll see. The thing that I find interesting is how the BESE board as a political entity does not get the attention that it did some time ago.
Right.
And So that's a challenge that whoever gets the seat has to deal with. And to what extent will they make education policy? You know, you've got the governor and the legislature making education policy. You've got the superintendent of education. You've got the local school boards. You know, it's very fractured. And one of the things that Louisiana has to figure out is, do we want to keep that system so fractured? Or do we want to kind of clean it up and give people who the voters know the responsibility for it?
That's a great question, especially here in New Orleans with the charter system and all of that that's happened after Hurricane Katrina. There's no one entity that feels like it is running the majority of the schools in Orleans Parish.
Who do you go if you have a complaint?
One other thing about the guy, he had a very effective closing argument.
Yep.
He got in front of the camera and said, "Give me your vote. I'm concerned about the students." And that resonated with voters. He asked for their vote, and he told voters what he would do. So that last minute appeal probably had a lot to do with why he's in that position.
And I think that's a good point, not just in his race, but the other races.
Yes.
A lot of the campaigns this time, I thought, kept the candidates in the background. Now, they had their pictures in film clips and AI clips or whatever it may have been, but you didn't really hear from them. They weren't really talking that much. And I think one of the effective things Stephanie Hilferty did was she ran a series of statements she made directly to the camera on social media for the whole campaign about very substantive issues. And I think the effect of that over time really helped her.
Yeah, it changes people's views, not only of the particular issues, but of the candidate individually. I would think that their persona.
Sure.
Well, that brings up another issue. We talk about AI, now we have to talk about social media.
Right.
And that's text messaging, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and those are things you don't control, but you can enhance your visibility, your credibility, and your presence with voters in effectively using social
And they're
media.
using it as an attack media
sure
source. I mean, I frankly, maybe it's just me, but I didn't see as much U.S. Senate campaigning as I'm used to seeing in big elections this time. But I'll tell you what, as far as social media goes, I got a lot of text messages, and I'm not registered to vote as a partisan. I'm independent, although I'm technically now called no party. But hopefully we can get back to being independents at some point. But the text messaging I saw in the Senate race was vicious. I mean,
It was a lot.
Really vicious.
It was a lot. It was certainly blowing
I
up
got
my
3
phone as
today.
well.
Yeah.
You got 3 today?
Yeah, I probably did too.
Yeah, it was a lot. That was definitely something that they were
But
using.
it's effective because you get it, you open it, you may not participate in it, but it makes your mind focus.
Sure. You
on the
want to see, well, who
candidate.
sent this?
Who sent
you know?
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary because that's how fraudsters work as well.
Yes,
Unfortunately,
some of
that
that.
works too. Not that the two are the same by any
Sure,
stretch.
yeah.
But another race that we do want to talk about and hit on is the St. Tammany law enforcement tax. It passed 2-1. You can see here, 65% to 35%. There were a lot of questions about this particular ballot amendment or initiative, millage renewal, because of the situation involving the St. Tammany Sheriff Randy Smith. What do you guys think that this vote says about his involvement and his decision to resign and take a plea that was very quick from the arrest to his now conviction? What does this say about that? Anything?
He did not waste any time in terms of resigning. We were able to separate the referendum from him in the sense that they purged some of the leadership in that office, and you were able to keep voters focused on what this was about, a pay raise and keeping the deputies improving law enforcement. That's what this was about. So they clean house, and this is basically reset. We press reset.
In St. Tammany.
In St. Tammany.
And it happened very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder whether all of it was timed for that purpose. You know,
I don't think without a doubt. There were certainly forces in play who were trying to make that happen over in St. Tammany.
Well, you had a group over there that was very active and vocal about what should be done.
Right.
So that was added pressure. And a community like St. Tammany, they were able to do that very effectively.
Yes, lots of other law enforcement figures were the ones who were coming out ahead of this to try and make sure that they were getting the voters' ear leading up to this race. And obviously what their efforts did were successful.
Sure. Well, you know, at St. Tammany, like Jefferson and other parishes, you've got a sheriff and you've got local police chiefs. In New Orleans, we don't have that. We have a police chief. And so if you're from New Orleans, it's a different concept in terms of dealing with law enforcement. You can like the sheriff and not like the police chief, or like the police chief and not like the sheriff. And but as Silas has said a number of times correctly, they did a good job taking the issue out of the personalities and politics of it.
And Randy Smith disappeared.
Yeah. Was off. Yeah.
It was off.
So you think that was a key? Yeah.
No reminders of him. Didn't see him, didn't hear from him. You saw the commercial, and it did not feature him. It focused on, everybody was singing the same song. It's about the protection of the people in St. Tammany and improving and enhancing what we pay our deputies.
Okay, so this was a pro-law enforcement vote, is what you both
In spite of the drama.
In spite of the drama, okay. But the big race, of course, that we have been talking about for most of the night is going to be that U.S. Senate race. We, you know, the Republicans got the majority of the attention, and in Louisiana, rightfully so, given our history and given our tendency to elect Republican candidates. But these are the numbers still coming in, but obviously we called this race a while ago, and Julia Letlow already made her acceptance speech. We already heard from John Fleming, who made his concession speech. You can see what the numbers are looking like right now, 57 to 43% for her. You think it's going to continue to stay around there at the end of the night?
Without a doubt, at this point.
It will, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her, you know, same thing happened in the primary. She's right from the very beginning, she had a lead tonight. It was a comfortable lead, and it grew a little bit over time. And the same thing happened in May 16th, the first primary. She started off with a comfortable lead, and then it grew over time.
You know, at this point, we baked the cake. And it's a question of, okay, how much icing you want to put on it and decoration.
Right, that's right.
So the cake is over and baked, and now it's just, okay, everything else is laying,
Yeah. All right, we, of course, heard from Julia Letlow that she did speak with President Donald Trump tonight, who called to congratulate her. Is he congratulating himself as well, do you think, in making that call?
Yes, of course.
Of course.
Yes, of course.
Why? You know, what does that say about his influence and the fact that this endorsement managed to boot Bill Cassidy, who he considers a political enemy, and put his chosen candidate?
Well, it says he essentially controls the Republican Party. The Republican Party is him and vice versa now. And now, will it last after he leaves office? Who knows? But I have to also say that from what I understand, it was Governor Landry who picked Letlow as the best candidate. So that probably helps Landry in Donald Trump's eyes, because he says, well, not only did we win, but the governor picked the right candidate for us. 14-point lead. That's a substantial lead.
Well, we know Jeff Landry has been posturing in Donald Trump's key issues for some time now, from when he was even, you know, the Attorney General.
And the relationship works for both of them. It's what's
you know, in life and in politics, there's an old saying, success has many mothers and fathers. Failure is an offering. And in this particular case, you will have a lot
Everybody's
of people.
got a piece of the action.
I got a piece of the action.
Okay. What are our takeaways nationally in terms of what this means for the country? Was this expected all along that Louisiana would stay red, and we're just kind of a given?
It was expected all along.
Okay.
Especially in this primary, in reference to a closed primary and runoff, and in reference to the general, which is going to come in November, we will probably see more national figures become involved on the Republican side and the Democratic side. So it will take a nationalist flair to some degree in terms of attracting supporters, and interests. But it's going to be very competitive. And redistricting definitely plays a major part into it.
Okay, and those are separate elections. I think that's also a
With
big
separate
question mark.
electorates.
Separate electorates,
yes.
separate elections, and will there be voter fatigue at some point, given that we're having election after election after election
Yes,
after
I
election?
think
Yes,
there
it's
will
there
be.
now.
Yeah.
I think there will be.
However, voters now can take a break
Yeah.
Okay.
between now
In November.
and November.
Right.
So, and right now it's summertime, 100 degrees. People are focused on vacation and recreational activities. Come fall, you focus on a regimen, school, work, and the closer we get from September or October, then we will have an intense electoral environment.
I remember when we still had the old party system, and Edwin Edwards had to run for governor 3 times. He ran in the primary against former governors, congressmen, major legislative leaders, and he won. You know, he got in the runoff against Bennett Johnson, who was a strong, strong candidate, and he barely won that. And then he had to get into a general election against Dave Treen, who was the Republican who ran a strong race. But Edwards won all 3, and I remember hearing him say, I'll be damned if I'm going to go through 3 elections again. We're going to get it down to 2, and you know, that's it. And a lot of people, a lot of Republicans, a lot of Democrats were afraid it would hurt them. But I think the election system that still works for local offices of having the open primary and the runoff, it seems to me it's worked very well. And you've got states around the country that are moving to it. So
Yet we're going the other way.
So I think the legislature will look hard about going back to it.
Because that's additional money for those candidates that, like, then the parties have to raise.
Yeah, it's a whole nother election.
A whole nother election
and,
cycle.
and for the state.
You know what else we have?
You know.
Early vote.
Yeah.
And that resets the campaign strategy.
That's right.
Because now the voting takes place 2 weeks prior to. You used to have to wait, 10 days for the surprise to happen and the attacks? No. You have to engage and direct resources as well as activities much earlier than you did in the past because of early vote.
So it's a longer period of time, which means
and
more
early
money.
vote, I think, based on some of the races I've been involved in, it looks to me like it increased the cost of the campaigns by about 30%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is a lot of money.
Yes.
And everybody's saying we're spending too much money, but then we're passing laws making campaigns that much more expensive.
And hurricane season.
Hurricane season
That's
plays a
right.
role?
Oh, yeah. Suppose we get a bad storm.
Yeah.
Interference in terms of utilities. People might have to be displaced. So those are factors that impact. If it's a serious weather situation, a natural disaster, everything stops.
Well, look, in the mayor's election after Katrina, you
Yes.
had people voting for mayor of New Orleans in Houston and Atlanta,
Yeah,
all over.
All over.
Yeah, so
What's
many
the
questions
national?
about that. That is, I know a chapter in history that no one wants to repeat. So
No.
hopefully,
That's true.
I don't even want to say it.
No, you're right.
I don't even want to talk about it.
No.
You know, but it's certainly something to consider as
As
we
long
move
as
forward.
we're talking about it, not the people at the weather desk, we're fine.
That's great. Yes.
Because everybody
Yes.
knows we don't know anything about the weather.
That's true.
Yes, that's a good point. But you all do know a tremendous amount about politics, and we can't thank you enough for being with
Thank
us
you.
and for lending your expertise to us as we continue to cover, this pretty substantial race that happened tonight. We'll have to see come November what happens between the Republicans and the Democrats, but, it'll be one to watch.
Yep, another one. Yep.
Stay tuned and buckle up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's head over to Devin.
All right, Katie, thank you so much. We have heard from both of the Republican candidates this evening who were running for that Senate seat. We're first going to go to Brandon Walker. He is in Baton Rouge. He has been at Congresswoman Julia Letlow's now victory party tonight. We heard from her just a short time ago. We know that she did really well in the primary, and now she's done pretty well in the runoff here. She said she fought a hard race, but called herself battle tested. How are things going there, Brandon? And what did she have to say in her victory speech?
Yeah, so we were able to speak with Congresswoman Letlow just after she addressed the crowd here behind me. You talked about those supporters being victorious. You know, just as she said that she was declaring victory here and moving on for the night, they began to file out here too. A couple people said, you know what, I'm going home. Nothing else to party about because we got what we needed. But she did say that this is not your seat, it is the people's seat, referring to the Senate. And Julia Letlow, Congresswoman Julia Letlow from Louisiana's 5th Congressional District, says that's in fact why she won tonight, because she sees herself as a direct representative of the people. She did address supporters, as you mentioned, Devin, as she came out here, introduced by Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill, who referred to Congresswoman Letlow as the candidate who defines everything that we do, a direct quote here. Congresswoman Letlow, representing the 5th Congressional District, as I mentioned, elected in 2021 in a special election after her late husband Luke, who was elected to that seat, passed away, complications due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Luke, though, was very much so representative here in this room, the Congresswoman acknowledging her late husband, saying that she would not be here without him. Take a listen.
People ask me all the time, why in the world, Julia, would you put yourself through this? Why would you put your family through this? And you've heard me say it a million times, but I don't miss a beat. I quickly go to my why, and it's an 8-year-old little boy, Jeremiah John, and my 6-year-old daughter, Jacqueline. They are why I wake up each and every day with that fire in my belly to go fight for this country. I was just telling them the other day, we're about to celebrate a big birthday, right? How old are we turning? 250 years old. And I told them that, and they said, wow, we're so old. And I said, no, we are really a baby republic, but my goodness, isn't she worth fighting for? And I am so grateful that for all of you, because I have a feeling your why looks a lot like mine. It's your children, it's your grandchildren. They are the reason we get up and fight so hard. And I will continue that fight on to the Senate. I will fight for our families. I'll fight for our farmers. I'll fight for our teachers. I will fight for our parents. I'll fight for our law enforcement. And I will fight for everyone in this room. And we are just getting started, and I'm so incredibly grateful to all of you. Every breath I have left, I will be fighting for Louisiana. God bless you. God bless Louisiana. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you all. Good job. Good job.
Congresswoman Julia Letlow greeting her supporters here in Baton Rouge a little less than an hour ago before leaving the room here. Again, victorious, again endorsed by President Donald Trump leading into this, so there was a lot of momentum, of course, going into this. The Congresswoman saying that she, in fact, has heard from the president tonight. She says that he congratulated her on her victory. She says that she is ready to go forward and represent Louisiana in the Senate. Of course, now she's got the real race to go through as the Republican nominee, hoping to be victorious on the real race going forward in November. Live in Baton Rouge, I'm Brandon Walker. We want to send thanks to my colleague Whitney Miller here in Baton Rouge over at the Fleming campaign. Whitney, the Congresswoman said that she did speak to Mr. Fleming a little while ago, congratulating him on his run.
Yes, Brandon, she did. Fleming did come in here tonight to concede, and he said that he spoke with Julia before he came inside. Started tonight was a room full of folks anticipating a win. Obviously, that turned into a concession later in the evening. I want to step out of the way here just so you can see the room is clearing out now. Folks got out of here kind of quickly. They had their Southern goodbyes. Some folks still milling around the room, but supporters gathered here at the Crown Plaza after polls closed, hoping that Fleming's conservative message would carry him to victory in the Republican runoff. Throughout the campaign, Fleming emphasized his record as a physician, former congressman, and state treasurer, while making opposition to carbon capture and support for President Donald Trump's agenda central parts of his campaign. But as results came in Saturday night, it became very clear that Congresswoman Julia Letlow had secured the Republican nomination for Louisiana's open U.S. Senate seat. Now, he greeted his supporters shortly after the race was called. Listen to what he told them.
We had 20,000 yard signs placed. We had so many people volunteering. Just today alone, people making phone calls and all of that. And look, it's been a tough year and a half campaigning, but I asked for this, okay? I felt that the Lord led me this way, and my wife, of course, backed me up on that. And we agreed that this is something the Lord asked us to do and move forward. But it didn't turn out as we had hoped, as you know, but that's okay. You know, this is a very healthy process, what we have in democracy today, where we battle it out and we tough it out, and hopefully we get the best to go to Washington or to Baton Rouge or to other things. But look, I'm going to be happy tomorrow. I'm going to be just as happy tomorrow as if I had won the election, because my happiness does not depend on getting elected to office. My happiness depends on serving you, the people of Louisiana and the people of the United States. And I've done that for many years, first as a physician, then later, of course, in 8 years in Congress, 4 years in President Trump's first administration, and now 2.5 years as your state treasurer. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. And yes, I love the heat of battle. I do. I love the combat. But it makes us stronger, and it makes us really better appreciators of what America is all about. And so I'm not going to speak long. I'm not going to wax philosophical tonight or anything like that. The contest for this primary is over, and now it's on to the general election, which of course will be in November. And we want to, again, continue to make America strong by sending the best of the best there and fighting for the freedoms, the things that our founding fathers prepared us for. And it's up to us to carry that on for the future. So I just want to say to you, good night, thank you. Let's continue to stay in touch, and God bless each and every one of you tonight. Thank you.
And there you have it. Yeah, Fleming leaning on his faith and his family and his supporters in these moments, saying tomorrow he will be just as happy as if he would have won. He told us after getting off the stage that he didn't want to take any interviews, but again did let us know that he called Julia Letlow and conceded the race. Now with Fleming conceding tonight, Julia Letlow now advances to that November general election where she'll face the winner of the Democratic primary. For now, in Baton Rouge, Whitney Miller, WWL, Louisiana.
All right, two very different looks at two different parties tonight in Baton Rouge. Whitney, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Alyssa Curtis now has a closer look at the St. Tammany millage renewal to benefit the Sheriff's Department. This was a big race tonight after the arrest of former Sheriff Randy Smith for an alleged steakhouse assault. Here's Alyssa.
Voters in St. Tammany Parish have mixed feelings about the millage and about Randy Smith's felony conviction. St. Tammany law enforcement officials have spent the last few weeks campaigning to convince voters to vote yes to renew a 10-year millage. But Randy Smith's restaurant attack arrest and subsequent guilty plea to second-degree battery and disturbing the peace has impacted that campaign, with Smith noticeably missing from a social media video. The millage would generate more than $13 million for the sheriff's office each year for 10 years starting in 2028. Officials say it'd go towards sheriff's office employee salaries, and saying if it doesn't pass, employee benefits, equipment, and operational expenses could be in jeopardy. For some, Smith's recent actions have affected their decision. For others, not so much.
Like I said, I'm kind of seeing waste in this parish, and I've lived here all my life. I'm 73, and I've seen it happen. I'm used to the good old boy network, and so I'm ready for that to change for my kids.
I don't think it's fair to punish the whole sheriff's department based on the bad decision of one person.
Some officials and law enforcement experts say this millage is crucial to keep the sheriff's office running, but ultimately the decision is up to voters. At Slidell High, Alyssa Curtis, WWL Louisiana.
All right, we're back with our political analysts, Ron Fauché and Silas Lee. So when we look at that millage and what happened there in St. Tammany tonight, what are your takeaways from that whole situation? This obviously won by a significant margin, 2-1 tonight. What do you think?
Whenever you have an unexpected event, such as the case involving the former sheriff, you have to take corrective action immediately, and you remove any element that might remind voters what happened, and you keep them focused on the purpose of that referendum. That's what happened here. And it's public safety. People are concerned about public safety. They can identify with affordability, need for pay raise to keep people. So those are some other elements all intersecting as to why this particular millage was able to survive. Any other situation, it would have been different. And another key element, you didn't have the issue of mismanagement, some monies disappearing. Now, if that happened, it certainly didn't come out. But you didn't have that as a major side issue. And that would have been the kiss of death if that would have emerged.
I think people were very nervous about this renewal
they were,
going in. Yeah, not only because of the Randy Smith situation, but because they've had a law enforcement tax that they've been trying to pass, a new tax or an increase in the tax, multiple times in order to, according to them, fully fund law enforcement agencies up there, and they have not been able to pass it. They've tried multiple times, as I mentioned, to get that through. And so I think they were very concerned about this renewal and getting that to go through, especially given what we saw happen with Randy Smith.
The environment we're in right now, where people are very pessimistic and cynical, and something like this happens, but it involved the personal actions away from the sheriff's office of the sheriff. So they took the corrective action, removed him from the scene in terms of visibility, and kept voters focused on what we are trying to accomplish.
Well, controversial politicians who support ballot propositions do more to kill ballot propositions than anything. And what happened here, as Silas said, was they took the controversial politician, removed him, took him out of office, and so it was no longer part of the issue. And that was the cleanest, easiest thing to do.
It's interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall in those conversations of how that whole situation played out with Randy Smith and his decision to take that plea, and this unfolding so quickly, because that's not typical that you see, someone arrested and then, they're already getting a deal at arraignment.
You may not want to have been a fly on the wall.
Yeah, that's
good point. Good point. We had a lot of races that we've been following pretty closely tonight. Not only this, of course, millage renewal in St. Tammany Parish, but we were also closely following the BESE board race. Joseph Gow up against Ellie Schroder. We are now calling this for Joseph Gow. How long has this been decided, do you guys think, tonight?
Well, we saw a trend earlier. He was at 51.
It was close.
Yeah, it was close. Now he's up to 52. More results in, so he has it. But it goes back to what I mentioned previously. He had a very good and effective closing message as to, this is what I want to do for you in reference to addressing the issues around education. And that did resonate with voters.
It did, you think? I mean, obviously, it did, as we see there. Does this say anything about John Schroder's power in politics? Does that have anything to do with this? This is, of course, Ellie Schroder's husband. Does that come into play at all?
I don't think so. I mean, St. Tammany was just one part of that district, and that was Schroder's base. Of course, Schroder ran governor and treasurer. He had statewide appeal. But I don't think it says that he's weakened or his wife is weakened. That was a good showing in a multi-parish area, which means either Schroder, if they wanted to run again, wherever they want to run, would be factors, I think.
And Joseph Gow, of course, he was in Congress for Orleans Parish after Bill Jefferson had his situation happen. And so he's been sort of trying to find a place, as you mentioned, to land. And apparently this is his landing post for now.
And he was able to close out this campaign on a high note of connecting to voters. That's a key element. We don't see that often, but you have a starting point, and you also have to close the election by discussing and presenting your appeal to voters, connecting with them.
And that was one thing we didn't really see much of in the Senate race. And a lot of these other races.
No.
I mean, usually voters want to make sure at the end of candidates want to make sure at the end of a campaign they're asking people for their vote, connecting with them personally, and that's always been considered. It might be old time now, but I think voters still like that.
They want that. They want to see more of the retail politics.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
They want to see the candidates and the people that get elected in the communities, discussing the issues with them. And there's a hunger for that. And not just social media, not just paid media. They want to see you in the community.
Is social media different from being in the community? I mean, can voters tell the difference there, do you think? I mean, we saw Stephanie Hilferty doing it as well.
Yeah,
And you said that was
well, I
effective.
mean, it depends how you do it. I mean, I think Stephanie Hilferty did a good job using social media to talk about complex issues. Most campaigns are afraid to do that.
Yes.
I thought it was wise for her to do it. For example, Mayor Helena Moreno is using social media every Sunday.
Yes.
She goes out, walks around neighborhoods in New Orleans, and talks about real things. It's not just slogans and superficiality, but real things. So I think both Hilferty and Moreno have given us two good examples of how to use social media effectively in a campaign.
I think there's a real thought out there that people can bypass, and these candidates can bypass the traditional media and control the message that way. And
You don't bypass it completely, but with social media, you're able to control the content. You're able to control the time, how long it can be. You can connect with certain demographic groups that you will not have the luxury of connecting with paid media necessarily all the time. So social media.
But it is paid media.
Yeah, it is.
Let's not forget it. It is paid media.
You are paying for it. It's not the traditional with the commercials and all.
Right.
But you have more control, and you can. Now the other thing about social media, it's a living, breathing organism that you have to update and monitor 24/7.
yes.
And that's what a lot of people
And they have
you
to keep it going. Yeah.
And you talk about on
Fresh
new
content.
occupation, social media manager.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
You can't do it by yourself.
Right.
You can't.
And
It's
then,
difficult.
they'll start having AI managers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then after an election or
another
two with AI, you're going to have candidates going on TV saying, this isn't AI, this is really me.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a factor. And, you know, people are getting good at spotting AI, but AI keeps getting better and better and better at creating these things. So I imagine it's going to be a factor from here on out.
Sure it will be.
Yeah. Well, you guys have given us such incredible feedback and insight into these elections tonight. And looking at this Senate race, let's talk about, you know, we're still going to get you in a couple minutes, but your parting thoughts for tonight on what we saw unfold with this race between Letlow and Fleming.
Well, number one, I think the people of Louisiana need to make sure that whoever wins the Senate race in the end, it's probably going to be Letlow, that she is prepared and able to work to improve Louisiana's economy. Louisiana needs help. We need infrastructure help. We need help in our economic situation, and getting the funds from the federal government are going to be very important.
All right.
And that's, I think, an important aspect.
We have to move it away from focus on a particular issue and ideology and focus on the critical issues of moving this state forward. I mentioned earlier, we've been 48 and 49 in so many of the quality of life indicators for several decades. That's what voters want to hear about. And I go back to some statistics, Georgia, Florida, and Texas, they have experienced double digits increase in population compared to Louisiana, where we haven't.
We have not.
Well, even a state like South Carolina, where we had a lot more people than they did 30, 40 years ago, and now they have a lot more people than we do.
Absolutely. It's a huge issue.
Sure.
And it's one of the ones that's going to continue to shape our elections, especially our statewide elections like the U.S. Senate race as we move into the general election in November. Thank you both so much. We're going to dip out real quick, and we'll join you on Channel 4 in just a few moments.